Hello guys, so this is mixing tutorial number 4, and today we're taking a look at my After the Burial cover for Exit Exist. Let's have a listen. So yeah, some really cool tones I'm happy with. I'm glad to be showing them to you. And since this isn't a very complicated cover, it's just drums, bass, and guitars, I'll be explaining the drum tone once again, even if it is similar to last covers. So let's go. We always begin these mix tutorials by showing what's on my mix bus, and that's the master bus. I'll just call it master so you can see where all of the music goes. So all of the music goes through this compressor, which is just reducing the volume a little bit on the loudest parts and giving it some saturation on the low end. So focused around 50 Hertz. I'll turn it on and then off. This just acts as some glue to make the whole thing nice and even and bumps our low end. This is another kind of compression, but it's multi-band, which means it acts differently on each frequency. So each frequency has its own attack and release, which is very complicated, but you don't need to know them all and set them all manually. All you need to know is that this compressor, if you put a multi-band compressor on your master bus, it will grab the kick independently to the snare or to the guitars based on their frequencies. If you look here, you'll see it react to the kick, here to the snare, and here mostly to the guitars. Take a look. What this does is that it makes the same nice glued effect as this compressor, but it acts differently on different material. So you can try some multi-band compressor on your master bus. Then we have ozone for the limiter. So this is where I make the music loud. Some snare hits are getting reduced as much as 7 decibels so that all of the rest can get pushed up. I'm also taking everything below 30 Hertz and cutting it, because headphones will never get that. Speakers need to be really big to get that. So you can try cutting it to see if you can get some extra loudness on your limiting. Also a good tip. Let's go over this nice drum tone. So the components to this drum tone are Gitco Drums Invasion on the kick and cymbals, Modern and Massive on the snare and toms. In case you're wondering, this kick, in case you have GGD, the Padauk snare, and the Yamaha Recording Custom toms. And just some cymbals I love from the Metal Foundry, namely my favorite China ever, and my favorite Splash ever. Really nice. So, this is good. Let's first go through the drum bus where all the drums are going through. They're all going through this SSL channel strip, which is giving them some saturation, which is this little knob here, which I'll be pointing to a lot. And in this case, just some high end. This little knob here simulates what would happen if an old SSL console like this is simulating, if it had some distortion from it being old and gritty. This is a really nice sound that's reminiscent of old records that we all love that were mixed on these SSL boards. Then this is how I do parallel compression. In case you're wondering, I put it on the bus and then I slam it and then I use the mix knob. So I use it at 15% here. Let's see what it sounds at 100. See, at 100 it's pretty fucking crazy. But if you dial it back, you get all the nice craziness in the good way, but you also get the cleanliness of the uncompressed mix. That's a cool way to do parallel compression. And this is just straight up compression, very much like the master bus compressor you just saw. This one is gonna take the peaks of our snare and tame it down so that we can turn the whole drum mix up. As you can see there. And this EQ is just removing any extra sub low end from the kick that can also mess up our limiter that was on the mix bus. So let's listen to the kick unprocessed. Just an important note, this kick is unprocessed, but in Invasion, it's blended with a one-shot sample already. So this is the natural kick, and this is the one-shot sample. You blend them together, and it sounds super consistent already. But we take it from this to this. We achieve that through some compression. Again, as you see, I'm using it at 75% because I didn't want the full effect. That's a nice tip. On kick, this usually works nicely. Then we're using the same kind of SSL channel, EQ. We're using it for the saturation and to boost high end at 2K and 8K. Also removing some bullshit around here that you can hear. Some stupid frequencies. Our bass is generating some 60 Hertz. If I exaggerate it, you'll see what it does. If you have headphones on, I am sorry for that. And then this limiter is just catching the peaks of the kick and turning them down so we can turn the whole kick up, just like the other compressors I showed you. So that whenever a kick gets too pokey, we can cut that peak off to let the rest of the body be stronger. As for our snare, it sounds like this, unprocessed. And we're gonna get it to this. This is a drastic change. So first things first, of course, this SSL guy for the EQ, boosting the high end at 8K and 3K, removing bullshit at 900 and adding 200. I'll show you what the saturation does right now. I'll turn it off and I'll keep boosting it up. It's subtle, but not really. You can hear some distortion, you can hear some extra low end. This is a really cool tool. And this 200 is the most important part of this EQ. Let me show you. Now you can hear it distort. This is where we get the body of the snare drum's attack. Really nice. Into some compression. Very slow, kind of slow attack of 30 milliseconds so that we let a nice peak go through the compressor so it sounds snappy. This is where we get a very nice attack. Our bass on the kick was set to 60 Hertz, but on the snare it's set to 120 because the snare doesn't need the low end at 60 Hertz. It needs some nice fatness at around, well, 120, maybe 150. Now that's thickness. And then a clipper. So the clipper is exactly like the compressors I explained beforehand, but more extreme. So if the snare waveform looks something like this, what the clipper does is it's gonna clip that attack so that we can bring the whole thing up. So you'll hear the attack distorting a little bit, but the whole snare will be more powerful and louder. I'll play it off. and I'll play it on. This is a drastic difference, really. You should experiment with clipping on your snare. I have a free clipper I can show you that really works nicely for this. That is G-Clip. As you can see, the snare is nice and clipped off, but from that other clipper, which is JST Clip. You can see it makes it super consistent. The way you use this one is you grab this, and now we're grabbing it. We're grabbing the snare peaks, and it's gonna sound, well, nice and distorted. It's essentially not as loud on the peaks, but it sounds louder, which is magic, which is what you want to do to your music. Make it magical. This is scooping some of 440 Hertz, not too important. And this is the limiter with the same philosophy as the kick. Grab the main peaks of the snare and chop them off again so you can bring the rest up. Oh, let's turn it on. If any of these snares has a peak that's really pokey, this limiter will grab it. Our toms. Let's grab a tom fill. Do we have a tom fill on this song? I don't think we have. Oh, there's the beginning. Individually, each tom is going through a compressor. Not much to be said here. Reducing about 3 decibels. Just to get some nice body, not really attack. The same saturation and the same high end as the kick, basically. Because toms are like little kicks. That's a philosophy trick for you. And again, clipping to make the attack nice and distorted and the body nice and loud. And on their bus, they're all going through the same. This is a little magic plugin. It's also free if you want to download it. The Density Mark III. It basically gives density. It's this little color knob you see me moving. If I put it all the way to cold, you'll hear that it's cold. If I put it all the way here, you'll hear that it's warm. I can't explain it, but you can hear. That was cold and now warm. It's a subtle low end thing. I don't know. You should try it. It's free. Then the same compression as the snare to get some nice attack that we may have lost from the clipping. And again, some low end on the SSL, not too much, and some saturation. If we turn that all off, these are how the toms sound before. Kinda weak sauce. Yeah. I'm sorry about these little blips, guys. I don't know what's happening. My computer should have enough CPU for this, but this session's acting kind of stupid. For my brass bus, which is everything else, so anything that has cymbals, including the rooms, I have a little EQ turning down, most importantly, this almost 4K region, which can be very harsh on cymbals. I'll show you. So I'm basically grabbing that bullshit and getting rid of it, just a bit. If you do it too much, your cymbals will sound like they're in space. And it's gonna sound bad and unnatural. Hi-hats, just removing low end. Hi-hats aren't bass, that's easy. Overheads are getting a little bit of compression so that the snare on the overhead mics doesn't cut through too much. All we want is to hear cymbals from overheads, at least me. Oh my god, I'm getting that bug again. Invasion sometimes grabs your cymbals and doesn't route them through the correct places. Let's get that corrected again. So yeah, some compression on the main cymbal hits and the snare hits. And then SSL, not for the saturation, but again, to reduce some of those bad frequencies like 4K. Let's see what this is doing. Yeah. Just taking a little bit of 4K out of your cymbals goes a long way. Also getting rid of unnecessary low end. I don't want kick in my overheads. As for my rooms, the room close I like to keep pretty clean so that it's the most realistic picture of the kit. It's literally just a little saturation on the SSL. The room far is the one I really like to compress to get some snare length so that the snare goes pa. The way I go about this is grabbing, you can grab any of your favorite compressor and try it. DF Comp I found is pretty cool. You've seen me use this a lot. You just get it so that on the snare hit, it just crushes it. If I turn this off, all you'll hear is a super loud snare that just attack. What you want is to, again, chop that attack off so that all the body can come up. This is like magic. Off, on. This is very important. And then this EQ is just removing a ring from the snare and boosting the high end. This is the snare ring. And then this mono, I'm doing something interesting with it. So Modern and Massive has a mono mic output right here, room mono. What I like to do with it is boost the low end and high end and distort it so that it sounds like just crazy snare. Like, let's listen to it. And toms too. I just want them to sound like impossible. Alone, this sounds stupid, but when you blend it in, oops, it just gives it superpowers. So I just saturated it with the SSL, and then I hit this Pultec EQ, super crazy boost at 100 Hertz and a super crazy boost at 10,000 Hertz. If I turn this off, this makes it sound normal. No. Yes. That's basically the drum mix. It's a very different drum sound than Will Putney's, but I wasn't on the mood to make a whole new drum sound, so I just rolled with this one, and I liked it, so hope you guys liked it too. Let's go about the bass. So, João Medeiros Exposed, guys. This is programmed bass. I just got Eurobass, and I've been experimenting with it, and I wanted to try to program a song with it, and I thought this After the Burial song was good to do because it was all basically the same as the guitars. When there's an important bass part, I would of course play that, but I experimented with programming it here, and if you noticed it, let me know, because I don't know if anyone noticed it. Let's listen to the boy, and when you listen to it in solo, you'll be able to tell. It is programmed. So basically, I split it into low and high. So the low frequencies are on one track. Please. And to do that, I used this Joel Wanasek bus glue bass. I grabbed the top part, which deals with the high end, turned it all the way down, and just used the bottom. Sorry about the crackles, guys. I'll get this fixed. So all I did was use the bottom, and the high end, I distorted using this Mercurial pedal, which I've recommended in the last cover, and you saw me use it there. I put the crunch mode and changed the IR to something I liked. That was it. Basically, by changing the IR, you get different flavors of bass tone. And then in blending them together on the bus, all I did was filter the unnecessary high end so that the bass doesn't fight too much with the guitars, and took off some mid-range. Also a nice boost around 75 Hz for that thick. Then into some limiting. To tuck the attack in with the body of the bass, just like the drums. And this EQ is getting rid of the super lows on the bass and getting rid of some stupid high end. Let's go about this guitar tone now, which is the same plugin as the bass distortion, this Mercurial SS11X. So very nice tone, I like it. What I did is I emulated the boost pedal into it. These are my DIs. When you turn on the boost pedal, they will be sounding like this. So a lot more well distorted and mid-rangey instead of bassy. Then you turn on the distortion in the cabinet and you get this. Very nice. To gate them, I'm using the stock Reaper gate. You can copy these settings. You put the attack and hold at 0 and a release of 50 milliseconds and just mess with the threshold. It's better than some pedal gates and it's absolutely free. I even liked it better than the built-in noise gate here. So there's that. Then it's going into some EQ to take care of some stupid high end and boost mid-range. Actually, this boost sounds really cool. This EQ, I'm going to turn it on and you'll hear very big change in the sound. So basically, I'm boosting 7K and boosting 1.4K, as well as reducing 260. But very importantly, I'm filtering anything below 5,000. That might seem like very low of a filter, but these filters aren't really accurate when simulating old consoles. Like this one. As you can see, they're basically simulating the same console. And on the consoles, you'd get, for example, this says it's pointing at 4K. That probably isn't 4K. That's like 3.8 or 4.2. That's what makes them cool, because you're not going through numbers. If you're using one of these, you're absolutely looking at numbers. End of story. But these ones, they get you more creative sometimes. So you just listen to what sounds best. Then taking some 400 out of the guitars. This isn't too important. And this compressor is on these palm mute parts, is taking some of that low end out. Without the compressor, these palm mutes would be very loud and woofy. And then this EQ, in the same style of every other EQ I've shown, is taking the super low end of the guitars out. In the guitars, you can go like up to 70, even I go up to 100 sometimes. Pretty useless information that you can save. And again, filtering the super high end that this impulse response, this Mesa Church Front 412 has. It has a lot of high end. That's the guitar tone. The lead tones are another Mercurial plugin. This is a Marshall simulator. This is basically stock settings. I just changed the cab to the V30, and yeah, it sounds like that. I I just added in some of the chorus, and then I put it through a bunch of effects. So basically this is the same EQ as the rhythm guitars. Took off a stupid high-end frequency. Oh God, I'm sorry. Put it through some reverb, of course. Through good old H delay in ping pong mode so that you get some stereo bounce. Very nice. And then an EQ. As you can see here, I took everything below 120 Hertz and got rid of it because it's a lead sound. Now let me show you how to do this cool trick. A way to do this trick is by automating a low pass frequency on your EQ. So let's look at this. This is how you get that opening up effect. You grab it, you would go to the envelope for that frequency point. So last touched frequency for the low pass 4. Let's show the envelope, and here it is, basically opening up with time. Very cool stuff. In case any of you were wondering how you can do that trick, that's how you can do it. Basically, all the other lead tones are the same, they just don't have this effect. And yeah, guys, thankfully this was a little bit of a simpler mix, so that's all I have to show you. And of course, you gotta add some bass drops on the breakdown. Any explosion sound you have, put it on your breakdowns. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little mix tutorial. Thank you so much for being a patron. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to check out all the previous mix tutorials, because the money you're paying is not just to see the latest one. You get to see all the ones I did beforehand, as well as the tabs too and everything else. So be sure to check them out, because they're here for you to learn something from my process, which isn't the best in the world, but it's good enough for me. And hopefully it's good enough for you too, to get something new out of, and dial some sick tones and be happier with your music. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.